Tekken 2, Kazuya's Revenge, also known as simply The Man Called X. Now, Kazuya is our main character in this movie, and he says to this other character who doesn't know what she's talking about. And that's the best way to describe this film, because I don't know what this film's actually about. We actually have a prequel to the original Tekken movie that came out a few years ago, but I don't think that's a very good job of actually telling you that it's a prequel. And I only read that on the blurb, so I kind of knew beforehand, but I don't think the actual film tells you that in a particularly any kind of way, really, so unless you know that beforehand you may be a bit confused. But anyway, basically we have our main character Kazuya, who is kind of really known just as K in this film, and he's kind of waking up from some kind of amnesia, doesn't know who he is, where he's come from, all that sort of thing, and he's abducted by this sort of band of criminals who want him to become some kind of assassin. And the kind of the main guy of these criminals is this guy who always plays bad guys, and he was actually the main bad guy in Tekken 2. Tekken 2, I see what they did there. Anyway, and he's got these kind of 3 hot babes that are kind of doing his bidding, and there's a bunch of kind of generic foot soldiers, that type of thing. And basically Kazuya is essentially trained to become this kind of assassin, but we find out obviously there's kind of a little bit more than meets the eye. But the whole film feels kind of pointless, to be honest, and we don't really understand characters' motivations and why they're sort of doing certain things. It just seems like a very weird setup. I mean, there's this very open kind of the compound of these sort of assassins that are just seemingly going around unopposed, of killing everyone they fancy, basically. And it's just a very sort of childlike script almost, with a lot of plot holes and a lot of just things we're just expected to accept, and like, you know, characters' motivations really aren't kind of explained, I don't think, and kind of you don't understand where people are coming from or they're doing certain things. It's just a very sort of like run-of-the-mill script, really just to get us to the next fight scene, Now, on the subject of fight scenes, I will say this: I actually think the choreography was actually fairly decent. There was actually some quite good fight scenes, so I will say that. And the kind of the actor who plays Kazuya isn't too bad. I have to be honest, he's probably the best actor here. You've actually got Gary Daniels here reprising his role as Brian Fury, and I actually am a big Gary Daniels fan, but I don't think he did a particularly good job here. But on the subject of characters, there's very few actual characters from the Tekken series themselves here. There's obviously Kazuya, Brian Fury, who I've mentioned, and Heihachi, but those later two really have relatively sort of minor roles, so don't be expecting a whole bunch of characters like the first movie. At least the first movie had that, and at least it had this kind of like tournament thing, whilst this one is completely sort of taken away and really just its own thing. It just kind of, I guess it's a story taking place in this sort of movie Tekken universe, but because of that it really doesn't seem that interesting, and the plot really is just very weak, and just really it's just an excuse, as I say, just to take you to the next fight scene. And unfortunately, because of that, it becomes across as a little boring. I mean, you can't buy into the characters. Everyone's kind of very sort of cliche. There's sort of ill-defined sort of motivations for most people, which is the thing that bugs me the most about this movie. So I think if you are a fan of the original Tekken film, you are still going to be disappointed in this one. If you didn't like the original Tekken film, you're going to hate this movie, because it's way worse than the first one. And the first one wasn't brilliant, let's be honest. So unfortunately, I don't really understand why they've kind of made this. It just seems like just a cash in to kind of really get that sort of Tekken name, really, and kind of make some random martial arts film and just bung a few characters and names in there and call it Tekken. So unfortunately, aside from some fairly good sort of fight scenes, which I guess I'll give it a few extra points for, unfortunately this film is just so sort of mediocre and kind of just, quite frankly, boring. I can't really recommend it. So based on the fight scenes alone, I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 10. But you take them out of it, it's kind of, if you want plot, then... Anyway, have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.